The boys are back on the field in the South Side. Quarterback competitions and Patrick Queen dunking on delusional Ravens fans on social media. We have never been more back than we are today, May 21st. Steelers opening OTAs today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Black and Gold Breakdown on the channel. Be sure to do all that YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, all of that. Joining me today, my friend Zachary Smith, co-host of the Around the 412 podcast, as well as the Steelers Afternoon Drive for Steelers Now. What is going on, buddy?
Jarrett, I appreciate you having me on again. Always a pleasure. Excited to talk some ball. You said it's May 21st, and I had to look at my laptop and see the date because that's just crazy to me that it's already May 21st.
Yeah, so think about this. Think about like how long you feel the Super Bowl was ago. Doesn't feel all that long ago to me. There's less time now between now and the preseason than there was between now and the Super Bowl. So we're close. We're closer than you may think. It's getting here.
It'll be here very quickly.
Yes. And in about 2 months, teams will start arriving for training camp as well. So we are inching ever so closer to the 2024 NFL season. And yeah, it's an exciting time of the year. It's an exciting time full of anticipation. The Steelers opened OTAs today. So, the first look of Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Patrick Queen, all these new faces and some form of Steelers threads, seeing them in shells for the first time. We'll start off with this. Justin Fields addressed the media for the first time as a Steeler. And one of the bigger quotes, one of the bigger takeaways was just his approach to this offseason and this quarterback competition, if you will. Pointing at saying, hey, I don't envision myself sitting for the entire year. I'm showing up to compete. But it wasn't in a way that was, disrespectful. I mean, he was like, look, me and Russ are going to bring the best out in each other. He knows I'm here to compete. I know he's here to compete. We're going to push each other. And basically, may the best man win type of situation. And I think that type of mentality is only going to be a iron sharpens iron type situation for both of these quarterbacks. Two guys who were more or less cast off from their previous destinations and have a lot to prove. What are your thoughts on Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, and finally being able to see them in person? And then what's to come the rest of this summer in this quarterback competition?
I think Justin said exactly what you want a guy in his position to say. Like, could you imagine if he just came in here and said, yeah, I'm just here to be the backup to Russ?
Right.
For a season, we'll go from there. That's how you end up going to Philly to be the backup. That's what happens if you come in there and say it's but I think he's got the right approach to this thing. By no accounts slighting Russ in the process of, propping himself up and saying he thinks that he can make this a competition. Obviously, has the most belief in himself, in his own ability. So already, I think he's checking a box here in terms of the mindset that he's coming in here with. So I can appreciate that first and foremost. Derek Bell, another friend of the show, has a great story over at Steelers Now about this, actually. I don't know if you noticed just off the short clips that we were able to see today, but Justin mechanically looks different. And I think that, basically step number one for this process in terms of Justin, I'm not saying strip down everything about him,
Right.
but I think that, as soon as Pittsburgh got him, probably went back, saw his strengths and his deficiencies in Chicago. And, number one, I think the footwork was probably a thing that they looked at and said, okay, this is probably an area that we need to clean up first and foremost, to feel like he's even game ready for us. Now, obviously, is he going to be the one or the two going into the season? We'll leave that up in the air for now. But if he had to play tomorrow, what do we need to improve upon immediately? But I thought that he looked very different. I mean, Derek went as far as, going back from his rookie season to where he's at now, and season by season showing where he was at his lower half. But yeah, so that's obviously a big thing for me, is where is he going to be at mechanically, physically, just an impressive dude. Like, you see the side-by-sides of him and Russell Wilson, drastic difference in terms of their stature and build with the way that they are. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what this is going to actually look like, how much of a competition it's actually going to be. Just roll the ball out there and see who ends up being, the best out of the two. That's why I think preseason, I'm always interested in the preseason. I feel like more than the majority of people are, just because you're always going to get to see the rookie class. And once they went from 4 games to 3 games, it became a little bit more intriguing because guys on the roster bubble have to make more of an impression in a shorter period of time. But I think especially this year, because of the quarterback situation and seeing how that's going to play out, I'm going to be super tuned in during the preseason.
Yeah, and by the way, that's why DB's so great at this, is because he's able to just notice all these little intricate things. I think he went as far back as like Fields' days in Ohio State in terms of like the lower half footwork and mechanical stuff. So great piece that you can read right now on Steelers Now from Derek Bell. Absolutely fantastic stuff. And yeah, I think you said it right. Like, if Fields would have came in and been like, I'm just here to hold the iPad and wear an earpiece, like that would have put a big old damper on things in terms of the excitement that Steelers fans would have had. But I appreciate the fact. So I put up the actual quote here because I didn't want to misquote him. He said, "I'm definitely competing, and Russ knows that. We're competing against each other every day, and being out there helps me get better. Us pushing each other. Well, that'll be a good quote." I mean, I definitely don't have the mindset of me sitting all year. So I'm coming in every day, giving it all I've got and pushing him to be his best. He's pushing me to be my best each and every day. That's all you could ask for in a guy who, again, both of these guys, Russ coming from Denver, who was basically exiled away from there by Sean Payton, and then the Bears, who Fields actually, showed some love to Ryan Poles and talking to the media where he's like, look, Ryan was true to his word. I told him I wanted to go to Pittsburgh. He abided that. And so a little tip of the cap from Justin Fields to the Bears organization for, giving him what he was wishing for. And now, we're going to see how this thing plays out. I know that a lot of people have really focused on, well, what are they going to do at, the receiver position? But George Pickens looks very like he was sculpted by, a 15th century artist. He looks huge.
Yeah, he's put on some muscle for sure. I don't know if like I was talking with Alan about this on today's afternoon drive, not sure if the weight is going to be any different, but it's converted. He's converted some to muscle for sure. So I'll be interested to see if he does weigh any, or if we'll even find that out. I'm not sure, but yeah, he physically does look different this year.
Yeah.
Same with Joey Porter Jr., by the way.
I haven't seen too much of Joey Porter Jr. clips yet. So
I just saw some pictures that Ed Thompson, the photo guy for the site, got. So that's where I've seen him. I think he looks physically more impressive this year as well, which if you were to ask me one thing that Joey could have done from year 1 to year 2, that's probably what I would have said. So
right. Yeah, our mutual friend Nick Farabaugh, your coworker at Steelers Now, shot me a text. He's like, "Dude, George Pickens looks fucking huge." I'm like, "All right, I'll keep that in mind. I can't wait to see." So that'll be fun to see in person. I'm also very much looking forward to seeing what the offense will look like. That's obviously been a big talking point. Russell Wilson was asked about the Arthur Smith offense today when talking to the media. And he had said, look, Arthur Smith is a guy who, expects us to play with a certain physicality in a certain way. We're going to be able to run the ball downhill. We know what Arthur Smith's offense is. It's going to be a lot of outside zone. I think we're going to see a little bit of some more gap type stuff just because the Steelers have a lot of guys up front who are really good at getting into space and creating blocks in that manner. But in terms of what this offense is going to do, what it's going to look like, it's going to be a lot of downhill running, a lot of trying to get into short yard situations to set up play action. And that's where we're going to see a ton of, these, hey, George is down there somewhere one-on-one. Let's see if he can haul it in. We're going to see Roman Wilson on a lot of intermediate crossers and in breakers. I know that people are wondering, okay, who's going to be the other perimeter receiver? But I expect if George Pickens and Roman Wilson are, the 1-2, and you have a John Mechie or a Traylon Burks as the 3, you can make that work in this offense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think that, don't get me wrong. I would love to add, a Brandon Ayuk or, go big fish hunting at the wide receiver position. But I think it's important to also just you need a good player there for sure. But it's different prerequisites that you are looking for from the receiver position when talking about Arthur Smith's offense. They want these guys to be able to run block. They want these guys to be able to just do different things. They still don't have that, route technician. Obviously, you got Roman who can take the top off from the slot with his 4.3 speed and is really good at finding soft space and zone coverage and stuff like that. George, we all know what he's going to do. But you really don't have that guy, in my opinion, yet. Right now, if you're asking me who the other boundary receiver is, it's Van Jefferson.
Yeah.
But is he that guy? I don't I think Van's a fine, he's a fine depth receiver to have on the roster. I'm not going to complain about him being here. But I do think they need somebody else. Those were two decent names that you threw out there. But yeah, it is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Talking with Alan again, something else that we talked about today. Like, we don't feel like this is finished yet with this wide receiver room. Like, we still think that there's going to be an outside addition in some fashion. So that's another thing that's going to be interesting to watch from now until training camp. Even, I know there's a lot of talk about the post June 1 stuff because of contract statuses for certain players around the league. So, we'll see if we get some answers at that point. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to watch play out.
Yeah, and one name that a lot of people are paying attention to is DK Metcalf. They were rumored to have reached out to Seattle. We'll see. I think that Cortland Sutton is probably a much more realistic name in terms of quote unquote big game hunting. I think that if you roll into the season with Pickens, Sutton, and Roman Wilson, okay, you can certainly do work with that. And obviously, we'll see if Denver lightens their tone on being more willing to move him should he not report to mandatory minicamp or training camp or what have you. But I would agree with they're not done at receiver. And you look at the names that they have brought in outside of Van Jefferson, like Quez Watkins, Scotty Miller, like those feel like more guys who are like, hey, Calvin Austin, prove to us that you're better than those two, please.
Yeah.
Rather than like, okay, we'll put one of these Scotty Miller, who if you put him next to me and made us face the opposite direction, you couldn't tell us apart. That's probably not a guy who you're going to have as your predominant boundary guy. So I would agree that they aren't done, nor should they be, because they still need that opposite boundary guy.
Yeah, one more thing with Scotty. I think that he could be classified as an addition to this is a new offense for a lot of guys, and he is familiar with Arthur Smith because he was there. Is he being brought in just as a body to kind of teach the guys the offense?
Glorified assistant coach, basically.
Yeah, they're going to give him a paycheck through, but very far from a secure roster spot, in my opinion. I'll be more surprised, honestly, if he makes the 53.
I agree. I think that you could say something similar to Van Jefferson, although I think Van Jefferson's spot on the roster is a little bit more secure as like the wide receiver 4. But yeah, like Scotty Miller is a guy who, like you said, they'll pay him for, a month and a half and you're like, hey, help these guys get this offense in. And, we'll give a great word for, your next potential team. But I would agree with the fact that he's probably not going to be on the final 53. I mean, worst case scenario is a practice squad guy. That's fine.
Sure. Yeah. With the new roles, being able to, stash vets on the practice squad, if he doesn't have another opportunity, sure. Makes sense to keep a guy around that has familiarity with the offense. So
Fireball and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Do you think that they keep 6 receivers or go 5 receivers, 4 tight ends with Pat Freiermuth basically as the 6th receiver?
Yeah, I think it's 5 and 4. I mean, I think that the addition of Michael Pruitt has kind of made me lean that way. I think they also are going to do some fullback stuff with, people have talked about the idea of Connor Hayward as the fullback. I think Pruitt's going to be the one that does some fullback stuff for them. I think that Arthur Smith really covets him as a blocker. Clearly, I think that he was the one that was pushing for that signing. Tennessee, Atlanta, 2 different stops. Now this is 3 stops that he's had Pruitt with him for. And you can kind of see some of that skill, not a pass catching tight end by any means. He's there for his blocking. So I think that they'll do some different, move stuff with him. And I think that it's 4 though. I think it's 4 and 5 receivers.
I would agree. And that also makes this receiver competition that much more like, because Marquez Callaway is also in on this. Denzel Mims to an extent is in on this. They're throwing a lot of darts and hoping that one of them stick. Like, okay, Marquez Callaway, you had an okay season 2 years ago. Denzel Mims, you were a 2nd round pick. Scotty Miller, you won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers in 2020. Sure, come on in. Like, it just very much feels like a crapshoot where they're hoping that somebody rises above the others to earn that roster spot. And that's what I've said, in terms of the Calvin Austin stuff is like, if he doesn't impress, like I don't think that his roster spot is necessarily secure.
No, I think especially when you talk about the types of receivers they've brought in, like you've mentioned, if you bring in a Quez Watkins, a Scotty Miller, who, I just said I don't think he's going to make the roster, but if he's going to, I think it's because, Calvin Austin had a really bad camp and, lost his roster spot. But yeah, to me, that was honestly what those signings said more than anything else. I still have felt the entire time like they're continuing to add to the bottom of the roster and have these guys go against each other. It doesn't mean that they're not going to add, a guy opposite of George Pickens. And this was even taking in consideration. They're probably going to draft a guy, which ended up being Roman Wilson, obviously.
I'm trying to think of like a wrestling match comp for like the Steelers' current wide receiver competition. It's like the second match on like a B pay-per-view in 2006 where you have like, oh, here comes Chavo Guerrero and Sylvain Grenier. Sure, that can be a match for the cruiserweight title. Why not?
I thought you were going to say, the new thing WWE's doing with Speed on X.
That's a good one. Yeah. So like Johnny Gargano and whoever the hell you want to throw in there is the other one.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, Ricochet's the champ right now on there, but he's actually sick. So I mean, most of those guys are. They just don't get the the TV time. So
absolutely, yeah. Shout out to all the fun flippy guys in WWE. Yeah, and defensively, I touched on Patrick Queen, who had a fun little Twitter exchange with somebody earlier, but exciting to see what he can do. You look at the Steelers off-ball linebacking group as a whole now, where you have Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson, two dudes that are very fast, both to and away from the football. Landon Roberts, who's a very good run stopper, and I think that will be more of his specialized role. I don't know if they're going to start the year off by starting Peyton Wilson necessarily, but I think by midseason, the two predominant guys will be Wilson and Queen, with Roberts still getting, a nice share of snaps. But I think those two dudes are just too athletic, too fast to not have on the field at all times.
I mean, a lot of this conversation hinges on what's going on with Cole Holcomb, right? I mean, they still haven't said anything about him. Was talking with Alan about it today, though. He's there and he's working out and everything. And, like this is, again, just a prediction timeline, I guess, from Alan, but he thinks he's going to be able to go in some capacity very soon. And there's been some speculation on that. So we'll see like what that actually looks like in terms of the football activity. But like just with how mum the Steelers have been about that situation, it's just really weird to me. So like I think he's part of the plans, but like until I actually see him get back out there and get back in the fold, we'll operate with the guys that you said there. And yeah, Peyton Wilson's interesting to me just because for so many reasons. We've talked about, the not having a slot corner really, like obviously like Beanie Bishop, there's going to be Josiah Scott. Like right now, who knows what that competition's going to look like. But I've thought about the idea of, a lot of the times, especially in the AFC North, when you have tight ends like Mark Andrews, David Njoku, could Peyton Wilson potentially be a solution for those types of situations, for teams that line up their tight end in the slot a bunch? So I think you are going to see all three of those linebackers that you mentioned on the field quite a bit in the AFC North matchup specifically. I mean, Landon was so good last year, and he had to play in a role that he probably should not have been put in. Obviously, when Holcomb and Quan go down in back-to-back weeks, it kind of elevated what he had to do, especially from a coverage standpoint. So, and then Patrick Queen, I have been watching him a lot this week. If you follow me on X, I've been putting up clips like every single day regarding Patrick Queen, because I was curious. The one thing that people seem to have questions about was the coverage. How's he going to translate there, just because of the responsibilities that Roquan was taken away from him in Baltimore and such. But man, whether it was zone or man, like I liked what I saw on tape. I think he can carry tight ends up seams. I think he's really good at understanding coverage or route concepts and passing off, cutting underneath. He can carry tight ends up seams. He can play running backs in the flat. He can do a lot of different things. So like, I don't think that he's a guy that you need to worry about bringing off the field on third down. So I think that they got what they need, honestly, in the linebacker room, assuming health. Obviously, we saw that get depleted last year, but with Cole Holcomb, they'll obviously be an even stronger group. Without, I still think they can get by.
I wonder if they would reach back out to, maybe a Miles Jack to bring him back into the fold in terms of just a depth signing where, I mean, they brought him in last year, and that game against Cincinnati, he genuinely had like his best game as a Steeler in either run, I would say. I mean, having him as a depth piece, not necessarily against it. I would have to pull up to see the remaining free agents in terms of off-ball.
I mean, will they circle back and see what Quan's rehab has been like?
That's what I was thinking too. I mean, that was another guy who got hurt last year. Along with Cole Holcomb. So that wouldn't be a horrible idea to kind of circle back and say, hey, Quan, how you feeling? Would you want to come back in? Having an 8 and a 6 at linebacker for the Steelers, sign me up. I'm all for the single digit revolution. I do think
that there is a lot more certainty with what the injury was too. Like we know that, he tore his Achilles, obviously. horrible injury, but like guys have come back from that and we know what it was. Again, with Cole, it's just like, okay, what all did he do to that knee? Because it's never even actually been put out there what all happened. Like we just knew he tore it. They said it wasn't just an ACL tear. Like what all exactly went on inside Cole Holcomb's knee on that play?
So in terms of other potential names to bring in, 2 former Steelers, 1 Quan Alexander, 2 Blake Martinez, who's still available, was with the Steelers last year, Gerard Davis, Zach Cunningham, another former Steeler, Tyler Matakevich, who's been a special teams mainstay for the Bills, Shaq Leonard, who spent last season with the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, so there's still some names, obviously, Shaq Leonard being the biggest one, but there was a reason why he's still available in terms of, that play dropping off over the past couple years. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. You brought up the defensive back room as well, especially the nickel spot where Cam Sutton has been rumored to potentially make a return to Pittsburgh. I mean, if they do that, then you're looking at you got Joey Porter, Dante Jackson on the outside, Cam Sutton starting at nickel, with a guy like Beanie Bishop, who I think will make this roster as an undrafted free agent to be a backup at that nickel spot. And then Corey Trice and Darius Rush, it kind of becomes, who wants this more? There's a lot of high hopes for Corey Trice last year before tearing his ACL in camp. Darius Rush was, I think, a 4th-round pick of the Colts, surprisingly got cut, picked up by Kansas City, stashed on their practice squad. The Steelers stole him from there. So a lot of young guys that are going to be hungry for some sort of roster spot.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with Cam Sutton is just so interesting to me. He's been here twice. He was here in Pittsburgh the week before the draft, and then he was here again a couple weeks ago. I remember I posted about it, and it's really weird how I got that information. My friend happened to see him at Target. So like, yeah. And then I also know that he was somewhere else looking for furniture. So like that kind of told me, I was like, man, I feel like something's going to happen here. But then talking with Alan about it, he kind of, reeled me back in on the situation and was like, listen, like if you think about it from his perspective, not even from a football thing, right? Just like real life with everything that he's had going on, where else would he feel more comfortable than Pittsburgh, the place that he spent, the majority of his career up to this point every year besides one. So is this just him like getting away from football and just saying, I want to be in Pittsburgh? Like, even if he's making that, say he signs elsewhere, like just his off season home, even would be coming back to Pittsburgh. So we'll see if something comes of it. I think too, what we have to take in consideration when talking about Cam Sutton is a looming suspension. Like, say they even sign him, is even going to be able to be a solution for 6-ish weeks or whatever that looks like from that standpoint. I've thought about the idea, and this is again just speaking from a football perspective, because honestly I kind of have a hard time wrapping my head around the idea of bringing Cam Sutton back because of the whole situation.
Right.
But the best role that he's ever played in the NFL was as a pass down nickel. So like if you're bringing him back in that role, I think that's what went wrong in Detroit, was they tried to do too much with him. Like he's not, every down boundary corner, and that's what they tried to make him. But if you
the Steelers tried doing that same thing with him too, in his final year for a little bit. So I would definitely agree with that. Yeah.
So if you do that, and I'll even throw a name on the roster last year that obviously not very heralded, but like you didn't hear his name a lot, and that's a good thing. If they brought in Shandon Sullivan again to be the rundown nickel and Cam Sutton the pass down nickel, I think you're filling one job with 2 guys. And again, all credit to Beanie Bishop. If he goes out there and wins a job, earns a job, great. Maybe you don't have the necessity to go and get 2 guys to fill one job, but I just think with what those guys bring to the table, the way that they would complement each other and basically be one player in the form of 2, that's how you could find a solution for the Steelers nickel problem.
Yeah, and there's talks about, do they bring back Shandon Sullivan? Do they reach back out to Patrick Peterson and have him play some sort of role? That's the one I don't get,
to be honest with you.
I don't either, dude.
Like I honestly, I like Pat, was great. With the media, he was here for 1 year and won the Rooney Award, which they give to the player that's best with the media, and the one season that he played here. And I appreciate the effort, but like people are talking about the transition to safety, a transition to nickel. Like the dude can't tackle, and that you got to be able to tackle to play either of those 2 spots better than on the boundary. Like he can't play on the boundary because of his foot speed at this point in his career, and he can't play inside or at safety because he can't tackle. Like for depth purposes, if we didn't have like Corey Trice and Darius Rush as a James Pierre replacement as like your backup boundary guy, 4th corner, whatever, then maybe. But like I don't see the fit.
I don't either. I'm very much with you on that. Where like again, nothing against Patrick Peterson whatsoever. It's just at this point, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. A lot of people also wondering, hey, is there potential to bring in Justin Simmons as well? And while I think that would be cool, like I think that some people overstate how much of an impact that would have. Like Justin Simmons is good, don't get me wrong, but he's also a guy who is, I believe he's 30 now, so he's a little bit on the older side. I would assume he's had his calls and whatnot and is kind of waiting to see if there would be any sort of bigger deal waiting for him. And there's certainly, I'm not going to complain about having Justin Simmons and Minkah Fitzpatrick on the same defense. But I do think that there are some people who are like, oh, man, if they do this as a 12-win team, I'm like, okay, pump your brakes there. Like, having two good safeties is awesome, but like I don't think he's going to move the needle that much.
Yeah. So I know when free agency started, he was looking for about 12 million for 1 year, which Steelers were never to come close to. They were one of the 4 teams that I had heard had contacted him, along with Philadelphia, which everybody knew, like that was
sure
a landing spot that made sense. Tennessee, but they obviously spent a ton of money this offseason. Don't know if they would circle back. And I'm not sure who else, to be honest. I was just told they were one of 4 teams. What that conversation looked like, or if they're still, interested, and if they've touched base recently, I don't know. I don't know what the role would look like. Does that mean him being a primary slot defender? Would they use Minkah in that capacity? Elliott, who they brought in, who has experience in the slot, like what does that look like? Would that also include KZ being cut if they were to bring in Justin Simmons?
That's the thing. Like if that does happen, I don't think there's a shot that Damontae Kazee makes the roster.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you have Minkah or Elliott play around the box a little bit, but like I don't know. I think that's what we were trying to get away from last year to this year. Like we lost so much of Minkah's playmaking ability because he had to play in the box. So I think they would like to get away from that. I mean, Justin Simmons certainly a great player. I would not mind him being added if they were just like, hey, we would just want another playmaking ball hawk on the back end. We'll find a way to use him. Sure. But I would be like, man, I have no clue how they're going to line this up for it to make sense.
I don't either, because they play basically the same position. So it's not as if you could, I mean, theoretically, I guess if you wanted to make one of them, the strong side safety and the other one play free, then, okay, you can talk about making that happen. But, I mean, there is a world where, the Steelers are playing 2-man with Fitzpatrick and Simmons as 2 deep safeties. And hey, it sounds great.
And again, like I mentioned, like Minkah's played corner. We saw him play outside corner. If you remember, I mean, I know you'll remember, but like if people watching and listening to this will remember, the very first snap against the Browns last year where Deshaun threw that pick 6 that Highsmith intercepted. Yeah, it was Minkah was playing outside corner. Like it was a look that the Steelers had never shown before, and that's why the Browns were just so thrown off by it.
And even back to 2021, where the Steelers didn't really have a solidified guy in the nickel. Like they were rotating, like, okay, we'll see if can Arthur Moats do this? Can Trey Norwood do this? Minkah had to wear a lot of those hats because, you trust Minkah Fitzpatrick in those spots more than you do, a 7th-round rookie in Norwood or Arthur Moats. So there was a lot of different things that Minkah had to do out of necessity, where I think eventually just doing it so much, he became a little bit more comfortable with it.
I assume you mean Arthur Millette.
Arthur Millette, not Arthur Moats. Yes, I meant Arthur Millette. Yeah, yes. Arthur Millette. Yes.
Great callback, though. Great callback. Also, fellow podcaster.
And he was at OTAs today. So shout out to Arthur Moats. Yeah. But yes, Minkah's had to wear a lot of hats on the defense. And I think that a lot of these signings, like with Patrick Queen and Deshaun Elliott, were almost as like, okay, we need to get guys who, like a safety that can play in the box, so Minkah doesn't have to, a linebacker who can, cover over the middle and take away tight ends, so Minkah doesn't have to. Like we can just let him be this peninsula on the back end and get takeaways like he did, in 2019 when the Steelers had acquired him.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I keep going back to is it seems like they've kind of realized the mistakes of last year. And again, some of that was, just due to injuries and them not being able to, deal with that in any other way besides Minkah having to fill roles that he probably shouldn't have been. But yeah, he's at his best when he's able to roam around and play different spots and be a robber, like, that pick 6 against Cleveland. And just, play back there as opposed to, again, playing in the box and having to do so many things around the line of scrimmage. What was that? Just what year was that where he had like 120 tackles or something like that?
I think it was
2 years
21.
ago?
Yeah, I think it was 21.
21.
I think it was Ben's
So-
last year.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we're a few years removed now from like seeing him be able to actually be himself. And, that's due to roster construction. Again, without having a solidified solution right now on the roster in the slot, I don't know. I'm not saying we're going down that same hole, but you better find a solution there so Minka's able to get back to 19 and 20.
Yeah, and you look at just like the overall numbers, like the drastic difference. So in 2020, he had 79 tackles, 4 picks. 2021, 124 tackles and 2 picks. And then in 2022, he had 96 tackles, so still a lot of tackles, but he had 6 interceptions. So I think that they would like to just be able to have him be that robber, be that ball hawk, and be like, hey, if you can get us 6 picks, great, tremendous. We don't want our, it's like, why would you make Ed Reed play up in the box when you necessarily don't have to? Well, they've had to use Minka Fitzpatrick in a lot of ways because they've had some deficiencies elsewhere. So I do game by game predictions twice a year. I do it the day of the schedule release. I do it the week of week 1, which you can go read, by the way, now on USA Today. Am I crazy for thinking that the Ravens will take a rather large step back this season after all that they've lost? I think that Mike McDonald, that's a big loss over to Seattle. Patrick Queen, obviously, we are the reapers of that reward as Steelers fans. Geno Stone staying in the division and going to Cincinnati. And outside of Zay Flowers, I don't know who Lamar's going to throw to. I think that Derrick Henry could be fun, but if your solution is, a 30-year-old running back in today's NFL, I tip my cap to you. And plus, I don't know, like, do we trust that Lamar is going to be completely healthy for a second straight season? I think there's a lot of factors with the Ravens that aren't being talked about, but I think that they could take a step back.
Yeah, see, like, my concern with them, I feel like, is never really about the regular season. It's once we get to the postseason. You mentioned the pass catchers. I mean, I guess they are getting Mark Andrews back, who was hurt last year. Hopefully, he's able to stay healthy. One of my favorite, despite being a Raven, one of my favorite players to watch.
Mark Andrews rules, yeah.
And they just gave Rashad Bateman a contract extension, which
he was never healthy.
I don't know why. Like, it surprised me that the fans were like so excited about it. Like, I was like paying attention to the social media reaction, and people seem to be very excited about it. But yeah, to your point, he hasn't been able to stay on the field. So I don't know. I know that it's. Go ahead.
They also drafted Devontae Walker out of North Carolina, who does one thing, and that's run straight. Also, by the way, our boy D chiming in.
He's late. He's late. We showed respect to Derek Bell earlier. So
anyway,
I loved Bateman. I loved Bateman coming into the draft and was very upset that he landed in Baltimore. Hopefully, he can stay on the field.
Yeah.
My big thing, like, honestly, my X factor for this offense, I'm such a huge fan of Todd Monken. I thought that was a great addition for them, moving on from Greg Roman, going to Todd Monken. On the flip side of that, losing Mike McDonald to Seattle, how much is that going to impact them defensively? So I have more questions about the defense and the offense. I just think Lamar will be able to elevate the offense and what's around him to at least drag them to the postseason, and that's where the questions really become for me. But to your point, I'm curious to see how much those subtractions on the defense, both in personnel and on the coaching staff, affect that side of the football.
Yeah, you mentioned the Ravens in the postseason. They are, in the Lamar Jackson era, 0-4 in the playoffs when teams score more than 13 points in the postseason. So if you can score 2 touchdowns against Baltimore, you're sitting pretty. I
feel like I just heard Pittsburgh's music. The Pittsburgh Steelers music is playing right now.
And that's the thing.
14.
Yeah, and FanDuel did like a hypothetical playoff picture, and they had like the Steelers playing the Ravens, and the Steelers were the 7, the Ravens are the 2. And I said, look, man, that's probably one of the more idealistic situations if you're a Steelers fan, because for some reason they have Baltimore's number. They've won 7 of the last 8 against them. Haven't lost in Baltimore since 2019. And if you give me the option of what team to play in the postseason, Baltimore might be number 1 as a Steelers fan, just in terms of like realistic playoff teams. Like, obviously, if I could be like, okay, yeah, play the, I don't know, who's the worst team in the AFC? Someone. You get my point, though.
I don't. Maybe. I'm trying to sit here and think. Like,
play the Broncos.
Yeah, I was thinking the Broncos or the Raiders. We saw
the Raiders will be
last
bad
year for Pierce, but like, Yeah, Gardner Minshew going to be their quarterback, it looks like.
Right.
We'll see
Point
how
being
that
though, like
shakes
in
out.
terms of like realistic
Yeah.
playoff teams, if I had to choose what team to play, hey, if I'm a
Yeah.
Steelers fan, I'm cool with them going to Baltimore in the wild card round.
I would say the ideal scenario is them hosting, but
Sure.
against somebody, whether it's them or Cleveland, like somebody in the division, because
Yeah.
the Steelers, despite all their deficiencies over the past few seasons, and obviously it being frustrating for them not having any postseason success, they've owned against the division.
Yeah.
Like, and I know that, obviously Burrow's injury last year is going to play into that and everything like that, but they've had the number of the AFC North teams. 5-1 last year. What is it, like 24-8 or something over the last 32? Like, yeah, I mean, they've just been very good against the AFC North.
Yeah. And, we haven't been able to see too much of, a healthy Joe Burrow against the Steelers, at least not this version of Joe Burrow. Obviously, we saw them week 1 in 2022. Burrow had 4 picks, and they very, very nearly won that game, if not for Minkah Fitzpatrick turning into a member of the
It
Justice
felt like we
League
lost anyway because of the TJ injury, but yeah.
That too. Yeah, that sucked a lot. And then later on in the year, they put up 37 against the Steelers and they win. So, like, when it comes to Cincinnati, that's one team, though, like in the division, I don't want to see. I just feel like when they're completely healthy, man, like that is a team that just plays completely against what the Steelers want them to do. And that's they're going to be really good at throwing the football. And defensively, like I still like them more than I think the average analyst, fan, whatever you want to call it, does. I think that they'll win the division this year. I think Cincinnati, as long as they stay healthy, obviously, I think that Cincinnati's the best team in the division.
We've talked about Todd Monken on the offensive side for Baltimore. Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator for the Bengals, I think is awesome.
Tremendous.
I was hoping a couple years ago he would get the job in Arizona that Jonathan Gannon got. So we'll see how that shakes out for them on the defense side of the football. But you're right. I mean, what they want to do on offense, going 4 or 5 wide, Steelers haven't necessarily been able to match up with. I guess my question, though, is this kind of like one last run for them, Cincinnati offensively, because of T. Higgins, obviously, with that looming. They're going to have to pay Jamar Chase. And once they start shelling out more and more money, are they going to be able to replace these pieces? So it kind of feels like that. Like it feels like this is the year for Cincinnati where they have to make something happen. And with Joe coming back from a very rare, weird wrist injury that a lot of people are talking about, I think that they're one of the more intriguing teams to watch throughout this OTAs and training camp just to see how they get through it health-wise. They did add a receiver in the draft, Jermaine Burton, who from a talent perspective, absolutely, I'm not saying he could be T. Higgins, but he can be a viable wide receiver too.
Lots of Steelers fans hoping that they would take Jermaine Burton. Obviously, he lands in Cincinnati. I've said something similar to that for a while now, where this is kind of like their, Dominic Toretto closing the door saying one last ride. Like it feels like this is going to be like their last hurrah with this collection of guys. Obviously, T. Higgins going to be playing elsewhere after this season. Perhaps Trey Hendrickson doing so as well, depending on what that situation looks like. I have similar feelings about the 49ers, which is why I don't think that an IU trade is going to happen. Like if an IU trade was to happen, I think it would have happened before or during the draft. And I think that they're going to be kind of running it back with their core one last time, because eventually, hey, you got to pay Brock Purdy. You got to choose if you're going to either keep Debo and trade Ayuk or pay Ayuk and trade Debo. Got to pay Afunga. Like you got a lot of dudes you got to take care of. So I think that there's some parallels between Cincinnati and the 49ers. Got a comment from Mark Miller. Ravens probably missed their window last year. A lot of turnover in personnel and staff. Last year was the exception for the Lamar injury rule. Will likely miss several games. Well, I mean, we'll hope he doesn't miss several games. Obviously, we're not wishing injury upon Lamar Jackson. But yeah, I mean, he's had, a history of injuries in that sense. And I don't know, like when Lamar's fully healthy, I mean, they're shooing to win at least 10 games. That's kind of been the rule since he's gotten into the league. It's like, hey, if you can play 17 games, he'll win. Is
he the quarterback version of Mike Tomlin?
That is a tremendous conundrum type of question that you just, that's good. That's good. Doesn't have too much success in the playoffs, but it'll get to the playoffs. Yeah, that's good. I like that. That's
like you know what the floor is. Like that he's going to get you there.
Yes, and very much so. That's the thing. Like,
and then what?
Yes, because so the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, he's played 2 playoff games, one each against Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. The Ravens have scored a combined 13 points in those games. So like you got to show me more that like his biggest win right now over the Titans maybe in the wild card round a few years ago. And like respectfully speaking, you should beat the Titans if you're the Ravens and constantly lauded as this Super Bowl favorite with, the MVP quarterback. Like I'd hope you can beat Ryan Tannehill, respectfully speaking.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That literally just popped in my head as we were talking.
I love that, Con. That's tremendous. That is tremendous. I'm gonna make a graphic of that, and I'll put via Zach Smith. That's gonna start some conversations for sure. Mark adds Burton is a punkin. Whoa, hey, well, come on now. What are we doing? Was there like some character concerns about Jermaine Burton that I didn't know about?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like,
oh really?
There was apparently not so great things said from both programs that he came from in terms of his ability to be coached.
Okay. We'll see.
That's what I'm saying. Like he probably goes second round if there aren't questions about him off the field.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, hey, you know what? Maybe he is. Who knows? I don't know.
He's a talented dude, but
all right. Everett says if we trade 22, it will be a big mistake because 30 can't carry the heavy load. I don't think they're going to trade Najee. I do think that next year, I'd be shocked if Najee's back next year. What is your thought on the whole Najee thing? Well, I don't think we've talked since they didn't pick up the option.
Yeah, same. I'll be honest. I was a bit surprised that
I was too.
And even talking with a lot of people, they share the same sentiment. Like everybody kind of thought they would pick up the 5th-year option. He'd play this year, next year, and then walk at that point. But yeah, so I guess Najee's going to hit free agency a year early. To be honest with you, from his perspective, I think it's a blessing in disguise. As a running back to hit free agency a year earlier, the hardest position to get guaranteed money at, I think that this is a good thing for him to be able to go and get a bag a year earlier than you thought you were going to be able to. But it certainly surprised me that they did. I can't say that I feel like super strongly one way or the other about it. I like Najee as a player. Still stand by that I didn't think it was a good draft pick, despite how good of a player that he could be. Just because of the situation. Like they dropped him in with no offensive line and said, fix their running game on your own.
Yep.
Clearly, he wasn't going to be able to do that. In terms of this comment, though, I do agree that like Jalen isn't going to just be a feature back on his own. Like if it's not Najee that's going to be here along with him, you're looking for somebody else of that ilk to kind of complement his game. Yeah. So I do think that, I almost feel like they could go about this in a Mike Wallace, Antonio Brown-esque way where like, okay, maybe they didn't pick up Najee's option, but maybe they offer him an extension. And I don't think that they're going to be there on money just because of what Najee said in the past about the running back market. He was kind of at the forefront of those talks, with the Zoom meetings with running backs.
Yeah, I was going to say he was one of those guys in that group of guys. Right. So yeah.
So, but I think what they'll do is then turn around and offer something similar to Jalen, who is set to be an RFA at season's end, and say, okay, well, then we're giving you this contract. And again, I think they still need to add another running back to go with him, but that you have one of those guys that you're committed to.
And hey, pay attention to Dajon Edwards in the preseason, everybody. The guy who had 13 rushing touchdowns last year at Georgia could be, hey, they've had a few swings and misses when it comes to running backs that they've taken in the mid rounds. Anthony McFarland and Benny Snell didn't exactly pan out to be, good rotational pieces, but we'll see. Yeah. When it comes to the Najee stuff, and Mike Tomlin talked about it a little bit today. I don't have the exact quote with me, but I mean, it was a very Mike Tomlin answer, of course. But when it comes to Najee, like, I definitely don't have anything against Najee. I think that fans look at the raw numbers and say, oh, he's got 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He's only got 1 year of averaging more than 4 yards a carry. So, like, we got to kind of find the balance between, oh, this is an outrage and it's not a big deal at all. Like, sure, it's a big enough deal, but at the same time, like, it's not as if he's irreplaceable I
think his best attribute has been the durability. Like,
he stays on the field.
The fact... Yeah, with again going back to the fact that they didn't have an offensive line in front of him for basically his entire tenure.
He's running behind Kendrick Green as a rookie. That was, oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah, it doesn't bode well.
No.
But his durability has obviously been there. Again, those stats are volume stats. If you look at a per carry basis, he's been pretty average in terms of that. So the production looks great on the surface. When you dive into it more, he's probably a top 15 to 18 back in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And look, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. And I think that there are a group of Steelers fans who are like, oh, he's a top 5 back. Well, no, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's a bad back. And I think that people confuse, saying he's not elite for us saying that he's like bad. No, he's fine. But I don't blame the Steelers for maybe not wanting to give a ton of money thrown his way, especially when you do have to worry about taking care of Jaylen Warren as well, who we'll see maybe eventually about how good of a feature guy Jaylen Warren can be in terms of being an RB1 in the offense. So we'll find out. Tom asks, if Holcomb's not coming to be ready at the start of the season, do the Steelers release him after June 1st? You only have 1 point something in dead cap, but gain $6 million in cap space. I don't think they're going to let him go. I mean, I think they're going to kind of let this thing play out and see what happens.
Yeah, his name was floated out there as a potential
cut candidate.
Cut candidate as we go through the process here, and obviously that would be due to this reason. Like, was a good enough player last year. Obviously, I thought got better every single week to be able to maintain a roster spot. So but I don't even think that this is going to be a conversation, to be honest with you. I know that they've been very mum on it, but again, I think if we were having this conversation a couple weeks, we're talking about seeing Cole Holcomb back on the football field. So, for the purposes of answering this question, like potentially, I don't know that they're going to value the $6 million cap space at that point that much. Like, we know that the Omar Khan has this well in advance where he knows how much cap space they need right now, how much they need before the season. I don't think that they're going to value an extra $6 million right before the season to cut Holcomb, as opposed to just letting it play out and see where he's at physically.
Okay, I'm going to float something by you. And again, we don't have to spend too much time on it because it's, very dependent on a lot of dominoes falling. But, we talked about the quarterback position to start off the show. We'll do it to end the show as well. If Russell Wilson and or Justin Fields, neither of them impressed this season in terms of being, the clear long-term answer, there is a certain guy that might be out there next offseason. Maybe the Steelers go in and get in on the Dak Prescott market. What would be your overall thoughts if that is the case?
I knew that's exactly where you were going.
Yeah, you read me like a book.
I think that Dakota Prescott will hit free agency.
I do too.
And I'll be all, what actually I know that this is like about the Steelers, but what I absolutely want to have happen is the Giants.
Oh, wouldn't that be something?
And him stay in the division.
That would be terrific. Oh, that would be fun. Especially if like Ben Johnson goes to the Giants to become their head coach. I think that if there's like, what, to hell with it, we're going balls to the wall. We'll bring in Ben Johnson. We'll give a middle finger to the Cowboys and steal their quarterback. We're going
in New York. Yeah, I mean, like, talk about teams that could do it, right? Like, they would be one of the ones that could get super aggressive. Man, it's just, there's so much uncertainty. Like, you bring in two quarterbacks, one via trade and one via free agency, that are both just only here for 1 year. Like, how rare of a situation is that?
Yeah.
And we don't know anything about 2025. There's been talk about them signing one of them to an extension beforehand. That makes no sense to me before you see either one play a snap in the offense. I can't honestly, I don't see it. Like, would I want them to? Like, my initial reaction if they were in on Dak Prescott would be, yeah, let's do it. Like, I feel like you have a lot of the rest of the roster in place. Say what you want about him. Again, another guy that certainly has had his shortcomings in the postseason, but like, unquestionably to me, a top 10 guy. Like, he's that talented. So
just led the NFL in touchdown passes a season ago. Like, that's a dude.
Sure. And again, volume certainly plays into that. Dallas passes as much as anybody in the NFL, but also, like, Brandon Cooks is a good player, but like CeeDee Lamb, outside of him, who else is he? Who else is he? Like, he's elevating pretty much everybody else within that offense.
Yes.
So I still think that Dak Prescott's a dude. Don't know. That would be insane to even like think about, though. Like, man, what are we talking about? 50 what mil?
Yeah, 50 something. The number starts with a 5 for sure. Steelers are projected to have about $85 million in cap space next year with all the free agents that they're going to have. And plus they have no money tied up in the quarterback position. So that obviously helps. But if you're a team that's, in win now mode. Like, you only have so many more great years of TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick. Why not jump on it and try to capitalize with, it could be very similar to the Rams and Matthew Stafford, where, okay, didn't have a ton of postseason success before, but hey, he comes here and look at this. They're in the Super Bowl. That would be lovely. But yeah,
Yeah,
just
I'm
a
looking at
little,
like who could be the other ones to do it, like
maybe Las Vegas,
yeah.
Vegas, Seattle. Trying to think of teams that currently
Yeah,
don't.
Seattle. Gino's guarantees probably run up after this year. I mean, I
Yes.
can't imagine they put guarantees on the last year of that deal. So
Yeah. So
or much.
I mean, there's certainly going to be a market. The Giants would be very funny. The Raiders, I think, would make sense just because they're, right now it's Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. Seattle makes sense just because, like, I think they're kind of in a state of transition from, okay, Gino, you'll be here another year. We have Sam Howell. Well, I think that they'll kind of take a step back in year one of McDonald. So, I mean, there's going to be a market there. It just depends on, what this season brings. And if Pittsburgh would be in on it, sign me up for Rain Dakota Prescott.
Financially, the Saints can't even think about that right now, right? I mean, Derek Carr's contract is...
Yeah, because the money that they gave Derek Carr, which, by the way, the Saints might be the most boring team in the NFL.
They're obsessed with being in cap hell.
Like, they are. If they would have just committed to a rebuild 3 years ago like they should have, maybe they'd be in a much better spot. But that is a...
If they have cap space... If they have cap space, they panic and they're like, okay, how can we get rid of this?
Yes. Yeah. They don't sit on money. They spend it like it's burning a hole in their pocket, which is just, it's not good. Like, such weird signings. Like, okay, we'll bring in Chase Young. Sure. Willie Gay's a good player. I don't know why he's going to New Orleans. I mean, maybe to get the bag. He's won a couple Super Bowls. I guess I kind of get that, but nothing that they do, man. Like, you got a boring quarterback. You got Chris Olave, who's fun, but you got an aging Alvin Kamara, Cam Jordan, Tyrann Mathieu, Demario Davis. All these dudes are very old.
Who knows what's going on with Ryan Ramczyk? Really good tackle, but that knee issue, who knows? So
absolutely.
But my point was with bringing them up in that division, man, if you get a quarterback,
you're
the front runners. I mean,
yes, absolutely. What do we think that Deontay looks like with the Panthers this year? I think that'll be a nice step forward for Bryce Young with Dave Canales.
Yeah, awesome. To answer the question, I mean, it's like when you look at how they've built that room, like Adam Thielen's old. Obviously, he's not the same player. Xavier Legette spent a first-round pick on. They got Jonathan Mingo, who I really liked as a rookie, as a prospect coming out, but obviously didn't have the rookie year that I was expecting, at least. But I think with the way that they've built that room with the different types of receivers that they have there, man, like Bryce is definitely set up for success in year two. The bigger question for me is to be the offensive line. They obviously paid the interior. They were the ones that kind of broke the guard market this offseason. But they need Ike Ekwonu to bounce back in a big way. He was awful last year, which really surprised me. But I think Deontay's in a great spot in terms of volume of targets. Like, it could look a lot like 2021 for him, where you're like looking at a relatively low ADOT and yards per catch, but he's catching 110 balls or something this year.
I think that they'll kind of adapt like not the exact offense, but similar concepts and ideology to like the Dolphins, where it's like, okay, quick steps, get the ball out and, get it to Deontay, who's going to be able to separate at the line of scrimmage and get some nice guaranteed yardage and little by little get down the field rather than be an over the top type of team. So I'm wishing nothing but the best for Deontay Johnson, a guy who's kind of, I don't know if you want to say misunderstood, but underrated as a Steeler. We have people disagreeing with us about our Dak Prescott take, by the way.
Yeah.
Listen, man, Dak Prescott last year had more touchdown passes than the Steelers have had in the last 2 years combined. So maybe we don't hate the Steelers. Maybe we want them to have a nice quarterback that, could help them win games that matter. That's just my thoughts on it.
I mean, what the salary, right? Like, are you going to pay him $50 million? And you can argue against, is he worth that or whatever? But like hitting the open market, he's going to get that. Yep. And if you're talking about what you'd rather, take your shots and throw the dart at trying to find a franchise quarterback, how many, it could take several attempts before you find that, if ever.
That's the thing. if this doesn't work out this season and they draft a quarterback, you're basically punting on the rest of TJ Watt's career as a Steeler, where like, okay, you're going to have another like 2-year project with a rookie that you hope, is ahead of schedule. Like, I don't know. I would rather see them go all in on a proven vet and go that route than, start over with a rookie who, you can hope turns into, a CJ Stroud and plays great right away, but that he's very much an exception to the rule. He ain't the rule of what rookie quarterbacks are going to be. Mark adds, I want them to sign a legit receiver, but are we as fans making it too much of an absolute need? Muth will replace Deontay's 80 targets with better yak, in my opinion. The running receiver should fill the Robinson role. Allen Robinson, God bless his soul, was not good last year. I think he had, 29
honestly, I think that's what Van Jefferson is here to do. He's now probably the best blocking receiver in the room. All credit to the effort that Roman Wilson gives. Van Jefferson right now is probably the best blocking receiver. But I agree that I think right now Pat Freiermuth is wide receiver too. We've talked about his ability to line up in the slot. They can flex him out, do a lot of different things with him. I think he's going to take on the Kyle Pitts role in the offense, and like people make a joke about that. Kyle Pitts production in Atlanta, like second on the team in targets, only behind Drake London. So like he still was, the quarterback play, if it was better, I think we're having a different conversation about what last year looked like for Kyle Pitts. So I do think that Muth is in for a massive year. But as far as wanting them to get a legit wide receiver, making it much more of a need, honestly, I'm thinking more so about like the long term here than the short term. I want this offense to eventually evolve into something more than just having to run the football, and just take your shots here and there off play action. So I still think this goes back to them needing a better option as a number 2 receiver, but I will agree that I don't think it's as pressing maybe as some of the fans have made it.
More or less, they got to more just get with the program of today's NFL, because like, sure, I think in the regular season, if you want to really lean on the run game, sure, go for it. You can beat mediocre to bad teams doing that. In January, man, you're going to have to make some throws. Like, and if you don't have bye, John. Thanks. He really didn't like our Dak Prescott stuff. Sorry, John. But Jay, you're going to have to make some throws in January, bruv. And that's what it's going to come down to. I love the idea, especially in the AFC North. You're going to have a good run game, but at some point, you're going to need a big play in the air against a Kansas City, against a Buffalo, against a Cincinnati, where, I would like them to have the options both at quarterback and receiver where they feel comfortable with being able, to make those types of plays. Rob says that's the difference with young guys. I would have never accepted Roger Staubach as Pittsburgh. Okay, goodness gracious. Now we're really going back here, aren't we?
Let's say that Patrick Mahomes was with the Dallas Cowboys and was set to hit free agency. We don't want him just because he was with the Cowboys?
I don't get it, man. Dude, if Lamar Jackson hit the free agent market tomorrow, I'd saw off my left arm to have him in Pittsburgh, respectfully speaking. Like, come on now. Let's be real here.
I don't understand.
DJ severely underrated. I agree. Deontay Johnson deserves nice things, and I hope he gets them. Buddy, this is a lot of fun. What have you got coming over at Steelers Now and around the 412?
Well, we do obviously afternoon drive every Monday through Friday, so we'll be back when you guys are watching and listening to this, probably tomorrow, unless it is a Saturday or Sunday that you guys are going to be watching or listening to this. Alan Saunders and myself, like I said, Monday through Friday typically comes out around 5 p.m. That is on YouTube, Steelers Now, or wherever you find your podcasts. You can find us over there. Around the 412, we record once a week, but we do 3 different episodes that come out in consecutive days. So that's kind of dependent, honestly, on the Pittsburgh Pirates schedule. But this week will be Thursday, Friday, Saturday with episodes dropping. I don't think we have anything like specific on the radar coming up in terms of interviews or anything like that, but we're going to be cooking. OTAs is typically the best time to start, talking to guys, making connections. Yeah. So maybe you'll see some players popping on afternoon drive.
Absolutely. In terms of this channel,
hold on. You got to mention this. You got to throw up that comment real quick, because he might be onto something.
X Concepts, yeah.
Lamar win every away game, but lose every home game.
Yep. So hopefully they'll just play 9 away games every year, and then they can just go consistent 9-8. Yes. Yeah, Lamar Jackson. Well, the one win against the Steelers was in Pittsburgh, but again, against Duck Hodges after Mason Rudolph nearly got decapitated by Earl Thomas. And if Juju doesn't fumble, they probably win that game too. So, well, do you remember overtime starts? The Steelers win the toss. They defer in overtime to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. They, nope, you can have the ball. We'll get it back. We'll win with a field goal.
I don't remember that. That was in that game?
That was in that game, yes.
You know what's crazy is I think like that game is that day is ingrained in my memory, but not necessarily that game. I had bronchial pneumonia at the time.
Oh my God.
And didn't know it. I wasn't diagnosed with it. They thought I just had like a strep throat. Like, I don't, they misdiagnosed me because they did chest x-rays and didn't see anything. Finally, when I got a CT scan, they saw it. But what happened that day was I coughed so hard that I popped my ribs out of place. Oh. So I went to the emergency room and they were like, my pulse ox was super low and stuff. They're like, can we do a CT scan? I come back and they're like, yeah, there is a ton of liquid filling up in your lungs right now.
Oh my God.
So that happened that day. That's why I remember that day so vividly, but not necessarily the game.
Right. Okay. Well, hey, we all have memories associated with something, apparently.
Well,
by the way, have you seen Livy Dunn around the city of Pittsburgh yet? I know I haven't.
I have not seen her yet. I will be at the Pirate game tomorrow for a Jared Jones day. Unfortunately, Paul Skeens is not pitching till Thursday afternoon. Two of his first 3 starts in the afternoon. I mean, this just sucks. They went to a 6-man rotation for a week and it kind of threw off all of his starts. But
yeah,
I have not seen. I was there, I guess, for the first game when she was there, but I didn't like see her. Saw her in the jumbotron, if that counts. But
I'll give you credit for that. You know, I might mock some people for like being like diehard Swifties and following her around arena tours, but I gotta say there is a price that I will pay to be in the same arena as Livy Dunn. So a
lot of star power in Pittsburgh right now.
Between a lot of star power. Dunn, oh my goodness, we're gonna have to have a wife off here eventually. That is,
you'll appreciate this as a wrestling fan. But when I saw about Steens coming up, I saw the picture that Livy posted on her Instagram story, and immediately I just thought of Sierra and Russ as well. And I thought of Cody Rhodes' intro. Pittsburgh has more than one royal family.
That's tremendous. Yes, they do indeed. Oh my goodness, that's great. Somebody should come out to Kingdom for their walk-up song.
Oh,
that would be a good one.
I mean, now, Yasmani Grandal comes out to John Cena's.
That's great.
Theme song, but yeah.
That's great. If they had like one of the better closers in baseball, I guess they have a pretty good set of closers. One of them should come out to Kingdom. That would be pretty rad. Especially like if the Pirates get their shit together and are playing meaningful baseball in like September, to have like a crowd full at PNC Park do the whoa. That would.
I mean, what you're talking about really hasn't happened since the days that Rob misses, where he was, rooting against Roger Staubach playing for the Cowboys. But maybe we will get back to that one day.
Maybe we will. All good hopes for Pittsburgh sports, for the Steelers, and all good hopes for my friend Zach Smith. Go watch and listen to the Around the 412 podcast. Listen to the Steelers Afternoon Drive every day, wherever you get your pods. Always appreciate you hopping on with me, buddy. I guess I can plug some stuff real quick too. We got a lineup of player interviews coming in terms of the pump fake side of things. So Gabe Murphy from the Minnesota Vikings, he'll be hopping on soon. A certain Steeler, we're kind of in the works of getting some stuff together too. So keep an eye out for that. I'm not going to say because I don't want to jinx it. And then a certain Bengals player as well. So a nice little lineup coming in terms of player interviews and the OTA portion of things. So buddy, appreciate you hopping on with me. We'll definitely do this again in the near future.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, brother.
All right, guys. See ya.